Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning. Good afternoon to a few out there. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Wednesday. Friday right around the corner, right? Just a couple days down the line. November 8th, 2023 is the date. It's about 11:32 a.m. here California time. Latest activity looks like a 1.9 here in the area of Texas, where we did see, well, the fourth largest earthquake there in Texas recorded history, with a 5-pointer coming in outside of the Pecos, Texas area earlier this morning. This has been an area of interest here recently with the ongoing earthquake swarm. Now that 5.3 struck early this morning, so we have to, well, it looks like they downgraded it to a 5.2 near the Colson Draw area of Texas, 7 kilometers deep. It struck at about 2 o'clock my time, so that means roughly around midnight out here. I believe this area stretches into the central time, around midnight local time there. Looks like it was felt from a few folks all over, looks like New Mexico and portions of western Texas out here. Now, of course, Texas is no stranger to earthquakes, but some of these quakes are getting up there in terms of magnitudes. Let's go ahead and check this out. So even with it being downgraded to a 5.2, that still makes it the fourth largest earthquake out here in recorded history. The largest one was a little bit further south here near the Valentine, Texas area, 5.8. That's a pretty strong earthquake and much stronger than a 5.2, just because there's a couple numbers. The multiplication there of intensity and strength is quite high when you bump up a few of those magnitudes. So that earthquake struck back in 1931, roughly within the same area. Now there is quite a few fault systems that run out here. We got the Sacramento Mountain Range and a couple other fault systems that run up against this area of Texas. We don't see a whole lot. We don't see a whole lot of earthquake activity out here in terms of these fives. But lately, we've been seeing quite a bit of smaller quakes, and they're hitting around these oil fields out here. Let me show you guys real quick. Just drop in here the satellite view and show you guys what's going on. That 5.2 struck out here where we're seeing that pretty good swarm of earthquake activity. Well, that looks like it's in the area where that 5.4 struck here last year, roughly within that same region. Now, if you look at the maps here and wondering what these little squares are on this map, these are not swimming pools out there for the oil field workers after a long, hard day in the Texas sun. These are wastewater disposal facilities, wastewater ponds out here, and there's quite a bit. Texas is completely cluttered with oil fields. I think we all know that about the Permian Basin out there, big time oil producers. And this area of Texas here outside of Pecos, Texas, is littered with these oil fields all over the place. Some of them blend in, right? Almost like a snake out there in the desert. You can't see the snake because of the camouflage there. So you have to look pretty close here. These are all oil fields out here. They kind of blend in with the Texas scenery out here. But that's what's going on. Quite a bit of stress out there amongst this area. It is away from the plate boundary being over here to the west, and of course down south as well. But there's always stress building out here against the plates. You get these oil fields creating weak areas in the crust, and they have been for quite a while. These earthquakes will continue for some time and probably get larger and more frequent as time goes on. There's certain areas that do get hit periodically throughout Texas, outside of Midland, other oil fields down south of Austin, San Antonio, all over the place out here. But Pecos, Texas is kind of like the leader in terms of getting hit with earthquake activity, and that could be due to the proximity here, maybe being closer to the plate boundary. If you look at it, closer to a certain fault system. Over the last 7 days here, just in this area alone, has seen almost 200 earthquakes. If you look at the other areas of Texas, some big-time oil fields up here, and south of San Antonio, that's the last week. Last 7 days, I show a couple other hot spots out here. Oklahoma in there as well. But just for the last 7 days of all magnitudes here around Pecos, Texas, again, almost 200 earthquakes. And this area up here where that 5-pointer struck this morning, is definitely seeing a significant earthquake swarm kicking up here now. Goodness, and it's all over these oil fields. Let's go back in here and see where that 5.2 struck exactly. Right next to, literally feet of this oil pumping operation out here. It's a looks like a pretty decent sized one. Some of these are bigger than others, and that's due to the amount of oil they're withdrawing from the areas below. But I think with this type of activity, look at this, man. It's just all over the place here. In fact, this main swarm, this new swarm with the 5.2 struck, is just a little to the east of where we see that, where we've seen the previous earthquake swarm activity here back in the beginning of the 7-day period. And there's oil fields all out here as well. There's actually a solar farm very close to this, I believe. Right here. I believe this is a solar farm someone mentioned. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the word I'm getting there on that area on the map. Fault systems run out through here, but I believe these guys, I think there's like some wastewater disposal facilities out here as well, up in the kind of like the mountain range up here. But either way, with this type of activity, I think we need to watch this area closely. We could be looking at some maybe larger scale movement taking place here. We know that some upper fives can take place. I don't know how large of an earthquake can take place if you get a complete collapse of the area, because this whole region is, I mean, it looks very unstable here with this type of activity stirring up. So we'll continue to watch the Texas area. And what could be causing that? Obviously, strain up against the plate boundaries. That strain has to transfer somewhere. Kind of compacts these areas. There is the old North American craton that sits up here and into Canada. It's a relatively stable portion of the North American plate that has not been deformed. It's remained stable for the past, who knows how many years, millions of years, supposedly. That's what the geologists state. But that's what the science teach us, that it's been millions of years stable, while everything else around it moves and forms. You got the Rocky Mountains areas up here against the, got the Appalachian Mountains, and other fault systems that run on the outside of this craton area of the North American plate. So most of that strain's probably coming up against from the west coast this way, up against the North American craton, or potentially regions down south. I'm leaning more towards the areas here across the west where, you know, everything's compacted. May not see earthquake activity, but that pressure and that regional stress is definitely high out here today against or on the North American plate. Goodness. So get back to the California area here in a little bit. The other region I want to cover is the Banda Sea area. Goodness. There is a lot of earthquake activity ramping up here in this region in the last 24 hours. Of course, the largest so far has been a 7.1. Now, what kicked it off here, it looks like it's going to be the 6.7 struck literally 1 minute, almost 1 minute to the T. See the seconds there? And the minute hand. 7.1, and then that was followed up here overnight by quite a few 4s and 5s, but also another 6.7 about 5 o'clock this morning coming into that area. Now, this is definitely a good sign here. Maybe something bigger brewing out here in this region. It has been clustered like crazy out here in terms of earthquake activity. It's no stranger to earthquakes and no stranger to very large magnitude earthquakes here. I pulled up historical data of the Banda Sea region, just specifically around this area. Now, what we're seeing here is just off the plate boundary. You can kind of see in the oceanic crust. Let me see if I can pull up the... there's a little ridge right here, a subduction zone. Remember, was it yesterday or the day before, there was a pretty deep earthquake out here. And I said to keep an eye on this region. I think in this going to be this area right here. But it looks like it's been past the 24-hour mark. But I said to keep an eye on this area, and sure enough, things are cooking like crazy here in the last 24 hours. The last one in this area is going to be a 4.6. Now, I want to show you guys historical data around this area where, well, that is, it looks like it's just outside of this, go back to the terrain here. Not for sure how to pronounce that, so I'm not going to slaughter it. But it looks as though this area has seen some 8-pointers. A little bit further up along this plate boundary here, an 8.5 back in 1938. Coming up almost on 100 years, right? I mean, not close to 100 years. I don't want to make people feel too old out there, because that's 1938. Seems like it was just, well, last century. But little time has passed here. They also did see within this area in 8.1. Now, that's a little bit more closer to today's earthquake, which was a 7.1, or yesterday, I should say. We're seeing all that swarming. So it's possible we could be looking at maybe some larger scale movement about ready to take place here. 1963, even a lot of time has passed since 1963, and that was 110 kilometers deep. So just looking at this area does show historical larger earthquakes than what we've seen today. So there is always a possibility of seeing some larger scale movement following this activity here in the last 24 hours. I think, next couple days we need to watch this area pretty closely and see what's going on. We haven't really seen any further advancement here across this plate boundary in terms of larger scale movement. Let me bring the earthquake 3D globe up here. And see, even this model is not showing a whole lot of advancement here across the Java Trench. This area we normally see, we're right about here in this area. This region over here is where that 7-pointer activity is taking place. Now, that is reinforced and backed up by the Australia plate moving to the northeast, the Eurasia plate moving to the southeast, and it's all just cluttered in this area. That's why they see so many earthquakes along this plate boundary. Plus, you got divergent boundaries here, kind of pushing the plate further into this cluster zone. So the likelihood of maybe seeing something larger here is quite high right now. So just be on guard for that. There was no tsunami that was produced from this 7.1. The dynamics are there, as far as the plate dynamics are there, but the magnitude was just a little bit low for a tsunami out there. But you start getting 8-pointers, even the upper 7s, then we can start seeing that potential for tsunami activity. But we'll continue to watch that. Plus, look at this little earthquake over here, 4 o'clock this morning, ways away from the plate boundary. Pay attention to these, because that gives us a good indicator, maybe some big-time stress up here against the Java Trench. When they occur off the plate boundary, these little odd ones can point towards something as far as telling a story goes. Now, looking at historical data here where that little odd earthquake struck, there's not a whole lot, specifically out here in this region. So something's definitely brewing out here against this Java Trench and the areas further to the east. So keep an eye on that. Keep your eyes on this area. Any other areas of some interest here? Let's take a look at the west coast, see if we got anything unusual going on. A couple smaller quakes up there through the Cascades today. 2.5 map and above here for the west coast. Shows most of the earthquake activity inland here, away from the plate boundary, up into the Nevada area. They did see a 3 yesterday and a couple other 2s this morning out here. A little swarm going on here near the Coalinga area. Pretty certain there's a little fault system that does run through here. It's either associated with the fault system that runs against the valley, or maybe something secondary here after the plate boundary, which is right here in this darker colored line. And if I remember right, this is the area that's seen a 4.5 here. Has it been over 30 days? I think it has. One of these areas up here has seen a 4.5. I think it was right around this area, but it's been over 30 days. But little bit of stress building up here against the plate boundary. That's kind of why I'm leaning towards all this strain, putting further stress out here against some weak areas of the North American plate. That includes areas out here in the oil fields. One thing about this here is we may want to watch further oil fields here across this area of Texas. The New Madrid zone over here is a natural fault system, 1.5 and a 1.4 yesterday, but no major movement. But this area can definitely see some large mega quake activity. It's been a little while since that's happened, but the slip rate here is not quite high. I don't think we've seen enough stress here to see a large earthquake, but you never know. So I'm kind of leaning towards the plate boundary out here, showing quite a bit of strain. So that could be a sign maybe to watch California. Got activity away from the plate boundary here. Movement just off the plate boundary down south. Not a whole lot going on down Southern California, but that does not mean the strain isn't there. We already know the stress and the pressure is built up out here. Many areas are well overdue for a big one. So we'll just watch that. Let me check out Yellowstone National Park. That's kind of up there away from it all. But at the same time, can be affected by the North American plate pressure as well. I'm not seeing any earthquake activity. This up here, I'm not for sure what it is. It kind of looks like earthquake activity, but it's not showing up on any other stations here, so I'm not for sure what that is up there around the Mammoth Vault area. I don't know if there's geysers up there or not. Yesterday's activity, the 7-pointer, showed up pretty nicely here. Well, let's see. Hold on a second. This activity is from the Texas earthquake this morning, that 5.2. Early in the morning. Yesterday's activity and S waves, and primary wave showing up here, followed by S waves in the wavy lines here. That's from the Indonesia activity. And I believe this was the other 6.7 that struck in Indonesia. After the earthquake there in Texas, if I remember right. It's been pretty active here in the earthquake department for the last 24 hours. Yeah, see, there's that 6.7 that struck after the earthquake in Texas. Kind of bouncing back and forth here. So, a little bit of interesting activity taking place here. I know one may not think that what goes on out here is related to activity out here, but it is as a whole. If you really think about it, these plates are all intermingled and connected in one way or the other, besides the plate boundary itself. Kind of floating along on a sea of molten rock and minerals and all sorts of stuff down below. So things are moving around here. Kind of moving around. I know out here it shows a general plate stress movement from the North American plate kind of going off towards the west in a way. But that stress builds up out here between the North American and the Pacific plate, or right here across this plate boundary. And that does have a lot to do with what goes on inland. So we'll continue to watch this here today, folks. South America, not a whole lot going on down south here. We got one recorded earthquake, a 4.4. But generally, things have backed off here in the last couple days around South America. The Caribbean plate, generally smaller quake activity. 2.0 up in Alaska. Let's see what's going on way up north here. Got a little bit of activity out here around the Cook Inlet. Nothing major going on. I don't see any unusual activity. One earthquake here up against the, this is into the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, 5.6. This is another area I think is well overdue in terms of megaquake activity. This is one of those zones that see a lot of earthquake activity historically, and doesn't take thousands of years or even hundreds of years to build up enough strain for a big earthquake out there. And it's been a little while since we've seen any mega quake activity. Deeper earthquake here in the Mariana Islands. A little bit of strain out here against the Mariana Trench, it looks like. This region did see some yesterday as well. Another deeper earthquake yesterday, 621 kilometers deep. Goodness. That is quite the deeper scale movement activity taking place there. No signs of anything building up. Well, we know it's building, but I'm not seeing any earthquake activity upstream here into these trenches yet. The rest of the world, older activity here across the regions of China and out there across, what do we got here? Turkey area, northern Iran. Although it looks like we did have one 4.4 in Turkey this morning, 101 kilometers deep. The Atlantic Ocean pretty quiet. One earthquake way up north here from yesterday into the Norway area. That's going to be a 4.6. Iceland activity. Well, I'm not seeing a whole lot showing up here on the globe. The earthquake activity tends to come and go up there in terms of that volcanic area. Let's see, where are we? What did I do with that? Oh, there it is. Moved it over here to my my main page. Doesn't look like they put out a any update on it yet. Well, 11/8. Yes, they did right here. Approximately 1,200 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. So this is the latest update they put out here. This article, though, was put out from yesterday, and let's see what they got. There's that little area of interest in the SA, I think it's called the SARS image, showing vertical displacement, which is quite high, well over 60 on this map here. I think they said about 7 centimeters or so of displacement, and that is leaning over towards this area. It looks like a little bit more to the east of the Iceland region around the Reykjanes Peninsula. I believe we're still at a yellow code out here, if I remember, or if I can check here. Looks like we are. That's going to be this area down here in the Reykjanes Peninsula, but more so over here where this activity is building up on that chart I just showed you. I'm going to have to get the correct pronunciation for this, but watch this pretty closely. The GPS, GNS, what is this called? The GNSS displacement here. Last data point was from, looks like yesterday, but the plot created on today's time frame. Still seeing that vertical displacement here. And, of course, earthquake activity continuing there in the region of Iceland. It's just something to watch here, right? Hawaii's another one that kind of watching for volcanic activity, although things aren't quite as active out here as it is up in Iceland. Not really seeing any earthquake activity here across the Kilauea volcano. We'll give a quick glance here at the HVO site, which is the folks that monitor it. Doesn't look like they put anything out yet. I'm kind of surprised. It's already noon here my time. It's a little late on their end. Let's double check here. We're going to go over to the instruments ourselves and see what's going on for inflation data and earthquake activity. Still seeing that sharp rise. Look at that, folks. Last 2 days. Boom. I'm really surprised we're not seeing an elevated earthquake event, but I believe this has definitely contributed to magma intrusion further below. So we may see a re-uptick here of earthquake activity along with further inflation, which would erupt or which would contribute to a larger, more explosive type eruption here across Kilauea volcano, depending on where it hits at. There has been, most of the volcanic eruptions have been fissures and beautiful fountains of lava that are sometimes eruptive. But I'm talking a little bit more so than that. When you got stuff compacted underneath this area south of the summit region, strain will build, and it will continue to build until the crust out here either gets weak enough to explode, or it finds some other weak crustal areas for some fissure activity. But I think as long as we continue to see that inflation kick up like that, earthquake activity remains south here of the summit region, we could be looking at maybe some eruptive activity. It's not always fissures, just doing those fountains of lava here. They have had eruptive activity It's been a little while. I can't remember the last time I covered that a few months back, though. Maybe it's been a year. I can't remember, but we'll look into that again. Earthquake activity, generally light. There is some earthquake activity here, although some of these look pretty local. Some of it may be in relation to earthquake activity across the area of Pahala down here, because they are somewhat close, just literally a couple miles away from the area up at the summit. Mauna Loa not showing anything currently taking place, but we'll continue to watch that with the intrusion of magma below the big island. A lot of magma down there, right? Maybe stirring things up further. Okay, down here across the Indonesia islands, or Kermadec Trench, 5.2 moving. Now this earthquake, pretty shallow, right around the this little ridge area, 9 kilometers deep. We have seen deeper scale movements here yesterday and overnight, once again into the Tonga Trench. That's further adding strain within this area here. Not seeing nothing, not really seeing anything here across the New Zealand area in terms of earthquake movement for now. And the Atlantic Ocean, as I mentioned, is pretty calm, pretty clear. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity out here. Got another 1.9 coming into the Texas region. Things are bouncing back and forth here, folks. Something big, I think, is brewing out here. And sometimes you have to look at where these are occurring around the plate boundaries themselves. It's all over the place today, it looks like. Could be an interesting day. I'll keep an eye on things for sure. But for now, 1.9 coming in, also a 2.2 bouncing back and forth here in between these two cluster areas. The newer swarm that we've seen today here is, well, let's see, has all these kicked up since the 5-pointer? Yeah, it looks like we had a couple prior to the 5-pointer, but most of these are occurring following that 5.2. Goodness, that's crazy. Crazy activity. And another one, right? Did that just pop up? Or is this an older one that just got added? Hard to say. But either way, things are getting very interesting out here across the plate tectonics right now. Let's go ahead and check out space weather activity, see if we got anything major going on here. Doesn't look like it. Kicking back down around the B flare category. Well, maybe holding steady here around C, but goodness, this is solar maximum. Come on, son. We got to get this thing on the road, get it on the road here. I had my hopes up for this area right here, but it dissipated fairly rapidly. Still got this region here across center disk of the sun. That's going to be 3483, right? Notice the complexity slightly within this center core of this sunspot region, but that's really about the only one that poses any hazard out there for flaring. I'm not even joking. And there's not even a huge threat for flare right now. 80% chance for a C flare. Whoop-de-doo. M flare, 15% chance. X flare around 1%. And we're in solar maximum? Are we done with it? Are we done with solar maximum? Maybe. These guys recently have adjusted their, this isn't it, but they do have the updated forecasted solar progression chart, and it shows solar maximum occurring now quicker than the original forecast. They're stating between January of next year and October of next year. Who's to say they got that secondary experimental forecast wrong too? Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it, and we're headed back down. Well, I guess we'll see, right? Going to be an interesting event, that's for sure. Look at that. Solar maximum. All right. I don't see it. Not a whole lot in the severe weather department for now. But we do have some major changes going on here for the West Coast as we head into early next week. We're talking about a bunch of rainfall coming in. I'm looking forward to it. I get excited about the weather days ahead of time, days ahead of schedule. I want to show you guys the one forecast model. This is going to show the low pressure, high pressure differences out here. And Right now, we're kind of underneath the influx here of high pressure across the west coast, but that's going to get bumped out of here. And you guys are going to cook a little bit out here across this portion of the country. Lots of warmer temperatures coming into the area. Look how huge that thing is. But also at the same time, we have a huge low pressure out here along the west coast, bringing with it a lot of rainfall. And I'm hoping that will stay that way. I was kind of talking about this last night, how I was hoping this high pressure would scoot a little bit further east, and sure enough, it did, speaking things into existence. Let me show you guys precipitation totals out here for the western states. Total accumulated precipitation amounts here. Now, again, this doesn't really kick in until Monday or Tuesday, but look at that. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, whoever is bringing this rainfall to me, because that is beautiful. We're looking at maybe some forecast models showing up to around 5 inches of rainfall here across Northern California, and that normal rain shadow that you normally see here across the Sacramento Valley is non-existent. And that is because the flow that is coming in off the Pacific is going to be coming in straight from the south or maybe the southwest. And that basically funnels right into the Sacramento Valley and prevents that rain shadow from occurring. Most of the time when we have a west flow from the west directly, or a flow from the northwest headed this direction, these mountain ranges up here squeeze all the moisture out, and we're left with a huge rain shadow here in the Sacramento Valley. And man, it can do some damage out here. I've seen inches of rainfall here across the western areas of Northern California where the mountains are, and nothing in the valley. And then it raises back up over the Sierra Nevada and creates that convection, and they get inches of rain and snow up in those higher elevations, and we're left with dry desert conditions here in the Sacramento Valley. But that's not going to be the case, and it's normally not the case in El Nino years. We get these low pressures coming in, spinning up moisture from the southwest, and it makes for an amplified moisture flow funneling into the Sacramento Valley, but also the mountains too. So, but at least the valley's included in there. I'm happy about that. So we'll watch for that. Rainfall totals are going up. They're not backing off whatsoever. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Let me show you guys. It's not in the works yet, but it will be. Let me show you guys the clouds here. Is this going to let me? Yeah. This is kind of like a computer simulated model of the storm system that's coming up here this week. It's pretty cool. Watch. I'll put this into motion here. That's a little slow. But there's a low pressure system building just offshore here. Ample moisture coming in from the Pacific, and that's aimed directly at the California area. And the brunt of it is going to kick up here Monday into Tuesday, bringing with it quite a bit of rainfall. This is just a simulated cloud feature. Look at that comma of a low pressure system here. And that's going to hit Southern California as well, bringing them quite a bit of rainfall. So get ready. Next week looks awfully wet. And these guys are showing, let's check out the rain accumulation from these guys. Next 5 days doesn't cover it. It's got to be in the next 10 days here. This is the ECMWF model. Now, next 10 days here. This doesn't cover all of the storms next week, but this is just a portion of them. That's really not showing the brunt of it, so we'll have to check back here tomorrow. HRR doesn't go out that far. GFS model. These guys now are a little over amplified, but they're showing about 5 inches of rainfall or so. And we'll check back on that a little bit later, maybe tonight or tomorrow. See if the ECMWF model gets updated. Some of these other models only go out a certain amount of hours. But yeah, we're looking at some decent rainfall coming into California, and that makes me super duper happy. All right, folks, stay safe out there. A lot going on right now with earthquake activity. There could be a couple regions over here to watch. We need to watch areas for advancement here across the Java Trench. There's a lot of pressure and momentum building across this area. but also here across the west coast. We got all this pressure building in the North American region. So just be on guard, stay safe out there. And if you are out in the Texas area, let me know if you felt that earthquake this morning. I mean, that you guys were probably, when was that? What time was that? About 2 in the morning, I think, my time. 2 in the morning. So technically, that is local time, my time. That would be around 4. I think I had said noon, right? Or midnight. But it doesn't go backwards, it goes forward. So 2 hours ahead here. That'd be about 4 o'clock in the morning. Not for sure how many people are up around that time or not, but let me know if you felt that earthquake out there and how strong it was. If it was a jolt or a rolling motion, more than likely these type of earthquakes are going to be a jolt feeling. But there's quite a bit of swarming going on out here, folks. Stay safe, and we'll catch you guys back here a little bit later on this evening with the nightly update. Make sure you guys subscribe while you're here. We do cover a lot more than just earthquake activity, but seems to be a lot of earthquake activity to cover. So subscribe while you're here. Like, share this video. Sure as heck helps us out. We'll catch you guys back here later tonight. Have a good Wednesday.